The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation.
Everyone stands equal before the law.
It's really satisfying as a New Yorker to see him finally see the inside of a courtroom.
He needs our support now more than ever.
I think it's a witch hunt.
Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. Donald Trump is a former U.S. president, a candidate for re-election, and as of this week, also a criminal defendant. The first former U.S. president to face criminal charges is using the case against him to build support for another White House bid. Thanks for being with us. Surreal. That is the word even Donald Trump himself used to describe what happened this week in New York. It's also a good word to describe our photo of the week. A former American president in criminal court after being arrested, booked, and fingerprinted. Prosecutors accused Trump of running a criminal scheme to conceal damaging information from American voters before the 2016 election, in part by paying hush money to a porn star. James Vicina has a closer look at the key players in the case.
It's a familiar expression that Donald Trump is using. The former president once again brandishing the accusations against him as part of a witch hunt.
I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
He's the country's first ever president to face a criminal trial and is committed to defending his case now unfolding in New York.
As Mr. Trump's fixer?
It's all centered around a payment of $130,000 to adult film star Stormy Daniels, who claims that she had an affair with Donald Trump back in 2006. The payment isn't illegal, but Trump is being charged for lying in his business records to try to cover it up.
What's your goal today?
Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, is now providing evidence against him, hoping to clear his name after saying he made the payments at the order of the president.
Yes, I lied to Congress at the direction of, in coordination with, and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. And if there's anyone out there that thinks that that lie is going to prevent me from being the credible witness that I am, based on the documentation, the testimony, the emails, the recording, it's not going to happen.
Independent interest in New York State. This is
the New York prosecutor who's spearheading the case is eager to make clear that Trump's status won't provide him with preferential treatment.
We today uphold our solemn responsibility to ensure that everyone stands equal before the law. No amount of money and no amount of power changes that enduring American principle.
The former president has labelled Judge Juan Merchan as Trump-hating. And while the case could distract from a second run for presidency, Donald Trump for now remains firmly in the race for next year's elections.
And we're joined now by Eric Lisann, a lawyer, legal analyst, and former U.S. federal prosecutor. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24 to help us sort of navigate some of the legal ground here. It's hard to really understate the historical significance of what happened this week. I assume you've seen the indictment and heard what the Manhattan DA, Alan Bragg, had to say. What do you think about the strength of this case against the former president? Is it a slam dunk?
It's not a slam dunk because from a legal point of view, the theory is untested. And when I say untested, I mean in the sense that it hasn't been used against a prior defendant in a way that's been reviewed and blessed, so to speak, by an appellate court so that it's firmly established in the jurisprudence in the common law tradition. But from an evidentiary point of view, the evidence is very solid as to what happened here. And I think once they get past the inevitable pretrial motions, which will take place, and I do think the district attorney will ultimately prevail. Once there's a trial, the evidence is actually quite strong because you have not only the testimony of Michael Cohen, but you have the testimony of another former Trump ally, the owner of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, and there's audio recordings which document everything that's said. And then, of course, at the center of the case, it's a documents case. There's the records of Trump himself, the Trump organization itself, which all paints a very clear picture. And of course, you have the women that are involved, whose testimony is there and corroborates everything else. So it's pretty clear as to what's happened here.
Well, Eric, hang on just for a second. Donald Trump is facing 34 felony counts, and that is our number of the week. And those 34 charges relate to just one of several legal cases the former president is now facing. As Emerald Maxwell tells us, Trump is facing legal peril on several fronts.
Donald Trump faces dozens of investigations as he runs for president again. His biggest legal troubles, though, relate to the 2020 election results, the US Capitol attack, the handling of classified documents, financial wrongdoing, and a rape case. In Georgia, Trump's been investigated for alleged efforts to overturn his election defeat. The criminal investigation was opened after the disclosure of a phone call between the former president and the state's top election official on 2nd of January 2021, in which she urged him to find enough votes to reverse Biden's narrow victory.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Prosecutors are determining whether or not to bring charges after a grand jury filed a sealed report. Meanwhile, a House of Representatives committee investigating the January 6, 2021 assault by Trump supporters on the US Capitol have urged the Justice Department to charge Trump over his alleged role in the insurrection, including inciting or aiding it.
And we're going to have to fight much harder. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
The Justice Department's remained largely silent about whether it will consider charges against Trump, who's denied all responsibility. Following the FBI's discovery of about 100 classified and top-secret documents at Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida after he left office, an investigation's also been opened into how Trump stored these documents and who may have had access to them. Additionally, the former president faces 2 lawsuits from a former columnist who accuses him of raping her in the mid-90s and then of defaming her. E. Jean Carroll is suing under a New York law that opened up the statute of limitations for abuse cases. Trump's business is also in trouble. The New York Attorney General has accused the Trump Organization of financial wrongdoing. The civil fraud suit could run Trump's corporate headquarters out of New York and put the organization out of business entirely. Trump has labeled the case and the various others surrounding him a witch hunt.
And with us again is former U.S. federal prosecutor Eric Lisann. Eric, so there are 4 criminal cases, as many as 20 cases if you include the civil suits. How does this New York case stack up against the others in terms of seriousness?
Well, in terms of the criminal case, I would argue that it's the most serious and that it is the only one that has been charged. And right now, from where we sit, it's the only one that's likely has more than a 50% chance of going to trial before the presidential election. We just don't know really where the other investigations are in terms of leading to actual formal accusations. And they've been dragging on for a while, particularly the federal investigations that you referenced there. In terms of, in the abstract, the overall seriousness of the offense, the direct assault on democracy that Trump led on January 6th, actually encouraging and giving comfort to and organizing himself an insurrection, that would be the most serious. And this, in terms of possible prison time, is possibly the least serious, but it is nonetheless by itself serious, and it is the one that he faces.
Why is this prosecution with the hush payments happening right now? I mean, these charges relate to something that happened a pretty long time ago.
Yes, there's a long history, and again, it involves the federal prosecutors, the Department of Justice, and the current Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Michael Cohen, the attorney at the center of much of this, who was Trump's personal attorney, was actually prosecuted for this several years ago and went to jail. He's already served a sentence for this. And it was during that investigation that Trump was identified famously as individual one. That is to say, he was an unindicted co-conspirator, and he wasn't immediately charged at the same time as Michael Cohen was at the federal level, because there's a Department of Justice policy against charging a sitting president. Also, his attorney general at the time, William Barr, did not want the case to go forward. He even tried to limit the dissemination in court of information that was implicating Trump. So it was widely understood that when Garland took over after Trump was no longer in office, that he would finish the investigation. But for reasons that are Garland has never explained, the federal authorities did not do that. And so it was left to the state authorities then to pick up the pieces. They had actually been blocked by the Federal Department of Justice from doing that, but they had their own state interests and their own state laws. And it wasn't until last year that Bragg restarted the investigation. And he went very cautiously, very thoroughly, a little bit slow, but in a way that he wanted to review the evidence. And it has taken this long for him to decide, yes, the evidence is very strong. Yes, there's a legally cognizable case here, and it's time to bring the case. And it's no easy thing that he has done. And in fact, he's the only one to have done it so far against all the obstacles that were put in his path.
So after appearing in court and once back in Florida, Trump took aim at the judge's wife. He even mentioned the judge's daughter for being aligned with the Democrats. Does the judge in this case have any control over what Trump says, especially when it comes to something that could endanger someone's safety?
The judge has control over what happens inside his courtroom. And so he did issue warnings, which Trump seems not to have heeded in terms of his provocations once he got back to Florida. It is possible that in the extreme case, the judge could impose a gag order if he feels that it's affecting the administration of justice within the courtroom by creating an unsafe environment, by jeopardizing jurors, by creating circumstances that will prevent the trial itself from unfolding in a way that can determine what really happened and whether there should be a criminal offense here. There could also be what's called contempt proceedings that the judge could initiate, which could place Trump in further legal jeopardy. It has to be said, though, that these are rather extreme and somewhat rare measures, and I think Trump senses that, and he's almost daring anybody to take that course of action against him.
Okay, former U.S. federal prosecutor Eric Lisann, thanks so much for helping us navigate this legal ground, and thanks for your insight and for joining us here on France 24. That does it for this edition of Inside the Americas. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Poverty, insecurity, violence. Difficult to imagine a future in Haiti. A government in crisis.
Pour avoir des élections crédibles, la première attente à laquelle il faut répondre, c'est la question de la sécurité.
Police forces are losing control as gangs establish their rule.
Haiti's hell right now. They like we are trapped in the prison, all right? We can do nothing.
Despite the downward spiral, some still hold out hope.
Vivons en Haïti, dans la réalité haïtienne, dans ce qu'elle a d'inacceptable, dans le rêve de pouvoir la changer.
Reporters, The Wounds of Haiti on France 24 and France24.com.